Oh my God. A simple, everyday exclamation became the overture to an abnormal year. Before the meteorological calendar could declare the official flood season in July, China had already sunk into a chain of drenching rains, swelling rivers, softened ground, and cold-blooded administrative decisions. The smoky industrial belts of the north, the rice fields of the south, the Midland cities, everything seemed to knit into one vast river washing over the map. The water did not arrive in one dramatic surge. It edged in day by day, tightening like an unseen hand until a whole province, then many, found themselves below the waterline. On July the 4th, a stark number was finally admitted. 329 rivers had exceeded warning levels. But behind the digit lay stories that would not fit in a statistic. The catastrophe was not merely atmospheric. It was also the consequence of a systemic arrogance poured into concrete as a symbol called the Three Gorges Dam, the symbol and the Achilles heel. Once celebrated as the ultimate triumph of engineering under the banner of modernization, Three Gorges now appears fragile as an overused metaphor. At its 2003 inauguration, the promise rang out, designed to withstand a once-in-a-millennium flood. Later, the pamphlets changed the tune, once in a century. By the time red alerts swept central China in 2025, even the downgraded promise felt like a cruel joke. The cracks in the illusion, both figurative and literal, were showing. To relieve reservoir pressure, authorities opened 11 spillways, pushing out 44,000 cubic meters per second, enough, in plain imagery, to drown Hangzhou's West Lake again and again. For downstream residents, this was not necessary regulation. It was flooding by design. Protect upstream industrial hubs, sacrifice the villages below. Politics won. Ordinary people lost everything. For years, independent hydraulic engineers like Dr. Wang Weiyu have warned that flood control was never the dam's primary honest purpose. Power generation and the economic political ladder it feeds was. Recommendations to draw down the reservoir before monsoon were ignored. The pool was kept high to optimize electricity. When extreme rain arrived, there was only one lever left: open the gates in a rush, turning regulation into submergence. Construction determined regulation into submergence. Three Gorges does not stand alone. China has nearly 100,000 reservoirs, many built decades ago, aging and weary in silence. Midnight releases with no sirens and no loudspeakers have become a risk management habit. Adjust water on the map by adding water to people's lives. A concrete body that can trigger quakes? Amid the propaganda, occasional admissions slip through. Minor displacements, structural adjustments. Independent studies speak louder. Fissures, stresses, reservoir-induced seismicity. Since impoundment, local quake frequency has jumped. One international analysis even noted that the reservoir's immense mass slightly affects Earth's rotation, a detail that is beautiful science and chilling when you remember it looms over human lives. But the tragedy is not just the concrete. To make way for the lake, 1.3 million people were uprooted. 13 cities, 140 towns, and 300 villages sank to the bottom. Heritage vanished. Many of the displaced fell into poverty while the electricity profits flowed to coastal growth engines. Flood history and a political warning. In 1975, the Banqiao Dam failure, kept secret for years, took an estimated 230,000 lives. The wound still haunts. Today, analysts pose the question bluntly: if Three Gorges malfunctions due to mismanagement or worse, fails, the consequence is not only water, it could shatter the regime's legitimacy, which has long tied its image to mastering disasters. As one Hoover scholar summed it up, if Three Gorges fails, the regime's symbol may fracture with it. The disaster clock is running fast. Late June 2025, the Sichuan Basin was pummeled by torrential rain. Zipingpu Reservoir began to discharge. Chengdu quickly sank beneath floodwater. By July the 3rd, districts were underwater. On July the 2nd, Three Gorges registered 152.87 meters, 7 meters above its warning mark. Inflow, 30,000 cubic meters per second versus outflow, 20,400 cubic meters per second, an elementary arithmetic problem with frightening implications. By July the 7th, the level exceeded 171 meters, edging toward the 175-meter structural ceiling. Nationwide red alerts, engineer brigades, armed police, the Southern Theater Command all mobilized. Experts described subsequent releases as controlled destruction, distributing downstream losses to preserve the core. Each ton of water spared above meant another neighborhood doomed below. The official press could only manage 329 rivers above, warning, the rest was silence. In Enshi Hubei, floods arrived after midnight. A red alert went out at 6 a.m. after the water had already taken roofs. In just 12 hours, rainfall hit 342 millimeters, smashing local records. Yet the authoritative updates tried to prove there were no deaths, while witnesses mentioned bodies inside a complex called Romantic Castle. Broken dikes, broken homes, and then broken trust. The Yellow River Bridge tragedy, when structural pride becomes a grave. At dawn on August the 22nd, 2025, the Yellow River banks in Hainan, Qinghai, shook. Not an earthquake. It was the sound of a main cable snapping during the final closure of what had been touted as the world's largest continuous steel arch railway bridge on the Sichuan-Qinghai line. 16 people, mostly migrant workers from Henan, Hubei, Hunan, Guizhou, went down with the steel. 12 confirmed dead, 4 missing. A multi-billion yuan project, trumpeted for years, turned in a heartbeat into a mass grave. Witnesses said at 3 a.m. crews were tensioning cables for the last closure. Only under 90 meters remained before a lavish end-of-month opening. A crack like lightning, then the structure failed in a domino collapse. The green deck, tens of meters long, broke apart. A slab speared diagonally into the river. Another buckled and sank. On the water, steel-tied, on the bank, voices calling the names of non-Mingang migrant workers who fed families with their hands and paid with their lives. Why? Performance fetish and political deadlines. Closure planned for July slipped, financing gaps, weather, off-book puzzles. A new order arrived. Finish in August at all costs. All costs meant white shift, black shift rotations, overstrained machinery, safety trimmed. In that pressure cooker, a single substandard cable or overtension step could pull the whole system into the river. Worse, it was not the first time. The name CRCC, China Railway Construction Corporation, sits on too many profound lessons. Bangkok, March 25. A CRCC subsidiary's build collapsed after a quake, at least 8 dead, 110 trapped. Oversight files contained 30 forged signatures. Serbia, 2024. Novi Sad station roof caved in. 16 dead, police cited over $100 million siphoned via fake invoice. And home, from tunnels to flyovers, hollowed concrete and hollowed governance repeat like a formula. After each disaster, the mantra "we will learn lessons" appears. But what lesson answers a widow's midnight question? Who is responsible? When scorecards still demand achievements, profits still demand margins, and human life is still a cost item. Tofu-dreg concrete, gleaming cities and slipping masks. The shiny silhouette of breakneck growth, mirrored facades, fast elevators, multi-lane boulevards is fraying before the paint dries. In Changsha, a slab fell and killed a 21-year-old woman out for an evening walk days before her wedding. In Wuhan, a wall soft enough to punch through. In Guangxi, an elevator plunged from the 24th to the 8th floor. The victim left only a breathless voice note. Help me. In countless towers, maintenance funds are locked behind rules. To repair a failing elevator, 70% of residents must sign harder than saving a life. Beneath the cracks lie political economic drivers. GDP races, cronyized bidding, saving cement, skimped rebar, performative inspections, videos leak online and vanish. Residents take to the street and are labeled troublemakers. A system that prizes speed over safety and metrics over people will naturally produce buildings that are new yet already old. Outbound capital in retreat when going out runs out of breath. There was a time when $175.1 billion in 2017 marked the summit of outbound investment. Beijing wanted the world to see not only the workshop of humanity, but a global investor. 2 years later, flows fell by nearly 45%. In 2020, the pandemic tightened the vice. In 2021, a 16% uptick flickered. Then, from 2022 through mid-2025, the line sloped back down, about $44 billion a year on average. A 75% plunge from the peak. Why? Real estate, the two-decade growth engine, burst. Evergrande, Country Garden, and more spiraled down, leaving unfinished shells and a mortgage-stuck generation. Banks strained for liquidity, bad debts swelled, domestic lending itself was shaky, let alone capital for outward forays. Meanwhile, the tech incantation drew tens, perhaps $100 billion into AI, semiconductors, digital platforms, an estimated $8 billion to AI startups alone, about $100 billion to tech overall. That money came by draining the Go Global pool. The Belt and Road glitter faded into stalls, social pushback, and debt blow-ups. China pumped more funds to rescue optics, but outflows still withered. In the shadows, private and wealthy outflows threaded the controls. Condos in Canada, houses in the United States and Australia, shells in Singapore and Hong Kong. Official stats rarely capture it all, but reserves thin. When the wealthy do not trust the domestic future, the global investor image blurs. Firms starved of capital cut production. Households tighten spending. Banks hesitate. The economy strangles itself. Abroad, Washington and Brussels read cracks. Partners once reliant on Chinese funds diversify. The narrative of invincible ascent gives way to one of fatigue and retreat. Officially, youth joblessness sits near 15%. Independent estimates place it 35 to 46% when counting the discouraged. New graduates sell snacks under noon sun, ride delivery scooters through red lights, or go back to hometowns to run stalls, the very work that once financed their degrees. One viral story: a young law graduate on 2,500 yuan per month left with 700 yuan after mandatory insurance. 12 yuan for the subway every day, and I still need to eat. The comments were blunt. Graduates do the work of 3 people for the pay of half. Under the jobless figures lies a mountain of debt. Nearly 900 million carry personal debt. 400 million struggle to repay. Credit cards, peer-to-peer loans, tuition, mortgages, circling in a maze of interest. Home prices slide. Assets evaporate. Personal bankruptcy offers little relief compared to rule-of-law economies. A man in Guangdong whispers on camera, "Do not come here. No job, no food, sleeping outdoors. I cannot even afford a ticket home." When Premier Li Keqiang once acknowledged 600 million living on under 1,000 yuan per month, the poverty eradication lacquer peeled in sheets. Fine dining restaurants open curbside stalls, farmers lose buyers, cities thin out. The social bridge creaks. There is no despair like crying into a vacuum. In Xi'an, residents discovered cardboard covering ceiling leaks. In Chongqing, a tower evacuated for normal subsidence. Sue the developer, the case dismissed. Find the builder vanishes. Tap the repair fund, not enough signatures. Post a clip deleted. From lying flat to opting out, from dark humor to exhausted sighs, a new vocabulary of disillusion spreads online. With a graying population, delayed marriage, and reverse migration, the social substrate that once leveraged growth is loosening. Here, every fallen slab is not only a construction accident, it is a political metaphor. At the core is corruption, from crony bidding to material swaps. Retired insiders occasionally sketch the recipe for a road washed away by one rainy season. Cheap price, thin steel, paper acceptance. Whistleblowers, if not silenced, often leave the country. The censorship apparatus does the rest. Scrub videos, block posts, stabilize sentiment. Yet social media still catches frames: 16mm rebar snapped by hand, pavement settling like flour, culverts cracked after one season. These images need no captions. Summer 2025 feels stifling, not just with heat. It is the breathlessness of a society walking thin ice. Rising floods, failing bridges, cracking homes, jobless youth, debt-pressed middle class, and a media machine promising while editing reality. Observers distill a simple test. If strength was installed in a structure such as a dam, bridge, or tower, the weakness may live there too. When the icon fractures, the story of power fractures with it. The question is not will it crack, but when and what the collateral will be. If the next storm demands another controlled release, if the next bridge requires another profound lesson, if another housing block needs 70% signatures to fix an elevator that has already fallen 3 times, then the resilience of the system will be measured not by the number of new light poles, but by the number of lives saved from the next drop.